Welcome to Peaceful Power Conversations. I am so grateful to have Lauren Reza on. I just actually stopped the recording to get the correct pronunciation. And I will say, um, I think of you as your last name being Lauren Lactation Lullaby.
I love
I
that.
don't even think of you as having a real last name. So when I looked at the screen and I was like, oh, I need to make sure I'm pronouncing your name correctly because
I love that.
um, you are so much of what you do and offer, and what you do and offer is so much of you that it's part of your name in my mind.
I love that. Well, thank you. I love that.
Yeah, so I just wanted to, I'd actually never stopped a recording because I have a philosophy of like embracing messing up. But then I was like, I really don't want to mess up her name. So I'm really grateful. And as I said, um, I feel like who you are, like in your bio, the written bio is so much of your presence. We've been in the same, we'll say, circles and overlapping communities for longer than we've actually known each other, but you've always been a presence where I'm like a light and someone doing so much in our community. And hopefully now that, we're reaching more and more listeners, the greater community with what you do and what you offer. I love your bio. I have newly started with my guests asking for a written bio, because not only do I want to hear, obviously, like how you introduce yourself organically and off the cuff. We'll get to that. But when we actually sit down to write these bios, and yours is especially thoughtful,
Oh,
it takes, right, like purpose and intention and energy. So I wanted to share the bios that guests have, and you speak to the mamas you serve. So I'm going to read it as you, which
yeah.
might sound, but um, hi, Mama. I'm so glad you're here. My name is Lauren. I am a nurse by trade, but after over a decade in hospitals, I stepped away from the bedside to listen to my true calling. Armed with certifications in all the areas my passion leads, combined with knowledge from working inpatient, I will guide you so you can be prepared for whatever comes your family's way. My many struggles at the beginning of my parenting journey propelled me into learning and supporting mothers on this isolating postpartum journey. I wanted to help other mamas achieve their breastfeeding goals and be a source of support and solidarity when they felt alone in their struggles. I love sharing what I learned along my journey, and I feel called to support others on theirs. It takes a village. Let me be part of yours and mother you through motherhood. I will walk you through this with holistic baby-led support for pregnancy and beyond. You are not alone, and I am here to support you. We're in this together.
Yeah.
And when you sent me that and I read it, it pulled me back clearly to my like two very unique. You'd think you like learn my two very unique um pregnancy, childbirth, postpartum, and nursing journeys. And it was quite an emotional like experience to read that. And I'm just so grateful to know that you are that to know you, period, and to know that you exist and are offering that mothering support to mothers. What's it like hearing your bio read?
That was a really interesting experience. I was like, that I had never heard it, and you read it so beautifully and eloquently. So I had never heard it like that. Of course, you write something and read it in your own head, but your own words in your own head seem so different than when you hear them out loud. So thank you for that beautiful experience. I loved that.
I love it too, because I was watching you as I was reading. I was like watching your face and taking it in. And with that, we can also get a little more specific. So, what, how do you identify or name like what you do and how you serve?
So it is so hard to really truly identify it. I am a nurse, like I said, by trade. I always thought I would work in the hospital for forever. And remember seeing those nurses in the hospital so burnt out, so ready for something new, and they never felt the permission I feel to step into something new. And so 2020 was such a beautiful time for me that I was really able to, through different circumstances, I had to take a little bit of a leave, and that leave led, I thought was only going to be for a very short time, and since have never gone back. So it's interesting to see from the other perspective of how the hospitals are run and all those things. And just now that I'm not a part of that system that's, in my opinion, so broken, I'm able to really see. And it's just amazing to be able to truly, I loved what I did in the hospital. I loved helping new moms. We were just bound by so many different things with the hospital system, and I wasn't truly able to help because I had other patients or doctors or the housekeeping or the dietary, or there were so many other things pulling for my attention. I wasn't able to fully be focused. And so I had my business before I stepped away from the hospital, but I wasn't as active in it as I am now. And it was just such a beautiful time to be like, I can't be a part of this system anymore. It's so broken. And to be able to step away and truly spend the time if I need. I specifically had one mom, I went to her house for a postpartum like lactation visit, and had my purse on, ready to walk out the door, had been there for about 2 hours, and she just started crying and sobbing. And so of course I put everything down and stayed with her and comforted her. And I was there for like almost another hour. And I just remember driving home from that day being like, I'm so thankful I don't work in the hospital anymore, because that would have never happened in that hospital setting. So to kind of go back to your original question, a nurse who loves supporting and teaching and helping moms, but didn't align with what was happening in the hospital system. So doing it on my own and being able to do it on my terms, outside of the hospital system, with lactation support, homeopathy support, breastfeeding, sleep, all the things that a postpartum mama might need.
Absolutely. I love that. And just to hear the story of like serving by just holding space, and having the ability to do that by being in a big sense, your own boss, right? So, and that is, so I've been working on this. I don't even know if it's a rebranding, because it's what Peaceful Power Project has always been, but I am starting to speak more about mental, physical, emotional, and spiritual health and well-being. So as I invite you on, talking about mental health in postpartum, talking about the physical, we'll call it like transformation and journey, and then obviously the emotional and spiritual component, you just were like this perfect fit, because we say postpartum, or sort of prenatal, we would say like pregnancy journey, right? And childbirth. And then also this whole either first time, like being a mother, like having all of these like new identities to navigate. And even if it's like your second or your third, you're a mother to 2 now for the first time, you're a mother to 3 now for the first, everything is a first time, and navigating that with the support of you. I want to pause with the like exact support and repeat you just to make sure I have everything. So I heard lactation and breastfeeding. I heard sleep support, homeopathy. How does that come under the umbrella of you? Do people reach out to you for one, some, or all? How do you work with people?
Yeah, so that's a great question. People definitely do reach out for me for one of the areas, some of the areas. I think through talking with them on the phone or however they contact me, they realize all the areas, and that becomes a big thing for them. For instance, one of my clients I've had for a few years now, and she contacted me with her second baby because she thought she got it all down. It's her second baby. She doesn't need help, which is such a common theme. So many moms are like, I've got this down. This is my second baby, my third baby. And they'll tell me, oh, wow, I didn't realize this, or I hadn't learned this in my mothering journey for my other one or two or three kids. And, I think that's such a huge thing, because there's a stigma that I've got this, I don't need to reach out for support, when every baby's different, every pregnancy is different. Like you said, you're now a mom to two versus one, and that's different in the dynamics of everything. And so reaching out for support early and often is something I preach all the time, because even if you feel like, oh, I should have this because this is my third baby, that's generally not the case. And if you feel like you need support, you should reach out for support. But people will contact me for a myriad of things. And like I said, this client I've had, it was her second baby, and we did breastfeeding stuff for him. And then it turned into, I helped her, she was having mold issues in her home. And so we helped her with that. We helped her get the baby into his own bed. And then later down the road, she wanted to put her two children together in the room. And so a lot of coaching and supporting on how that looks and helping her wean. So it's something that, if you want, can travel through your mothering journey, and not just that one point. But I do find people typically come to me for one thing, and then we'll kind of keep going depending on their needs for whatever is prevalent for them at that time in their mothering journey.
And you shared that your own experience is what kind of guided you or called you to this path and this work you do. Where was your own experience in your nursing? And the whole time you were nursing, was it specifically was it in like OB units, your entire nursing experience?
Yeah, so my nursing experience was, I started out in a postpartum unit, inpatient pediatrics, and started there. And then I did a training program, which was really amazing, that they did through the hospital, where you got to learn antepartum, which is any mom who is on hospital bed rest for a high risk pregnancy, a lot of different things like that. Or if you're pregnant and sick and need to be hospitalized, you would be on that unit. So we started with antepartum, and then we did labor and delivery, and then we did the postpartum mom baby couplet, and then we also did some NICU. So I did that training program for, I think it was like 6 or 8 months, and that was amazing. Really loved it, learned a ton, and then went off to a different hospital and worked there for quite some time doing pediatrics. And I would do what they called being a baby catcher. So if they needed an extra nurse at the labor and delivery unit to assess the baby right after they're born, because as a nurse, once a baby is born, now you have 2 patients. You always have 2 patients as a labor and delivery nurse, but they're in 2 physical different places now. So you need a second nurse to help with that right after delivery. So I did that a lot. And yeah, then I just really fell in love with postpartum. It's so funny because in the nursing world, so many people think postpartum is kind of the place where like the older nurses go to like live out the rest of their career and stuff, and not, it's kind of got this stigma to it that it's not where like the new young nurses go. They're in labor and delivery, and then when they're done with their portion of their career that is more high energy, and then they go to postpartum. But I was in postpartum and just was really loving the teaching aspect of it and the supporting and comforting aspect of that. And so truly fell in love with that. And that was where my heart was for most of the time, but I definitely dabbled in all the rest of it for sure. And I just love babies and kids. Kids are so resilient and amazing. And one of the hospitals I worked at, the children's unit was, there was like a little bridge between the children's unit and the adult unit. And everyone would joke that was a pediatric nurse, that you didn't want to go to big people land. So that for me was very evident and true. I loved the mom baby aspect of it, but I definitely did not love the big people land.
That's so funny. And then where in that did you become a mom?
So I became a mom in 2015 and I worked in the hospital until 2020. So I started in the hospital. And so I think it was like 10 years into the hospital, I became a mother. And so when I was pregnant, I was working on the postpartum unit and obsessed with the lactation consultant there. I followed her around like a little puppy. Every day she would come. I was like, can I do rounds with you? And wanted to know all the things she was doing and all her little tips and tricks. And learned a ton from her. I knew from before being pregnant that breastfeeding was something I wanted to do. And so really learned a lot and became super familiar with it through doing it with her. Of course, I had helped patients before then with breastfeeding, but really solidified the love for it then. And so a year into becoming a mom, I was like, I really think I like this and want to do this. I liked her job. I wanted to do that. So I ended up getting certified on my own through a local wonderful trainer. And it was changed everything. I was really just loved that and helping moms in an outside of hospital setting. My personal experience from giving birth was that I didn't have a lactation consultant. I was in the hospital 36 hours postpartum and never saw a lactation consultant, had a lot of issues and never really felt like I got the support and help. And then went to see their outpatient lactation support at the hospital and still did not feel like I got support and help, and actually felt kind of the opposite through seeing that lactation consultant, and then finally hired someone to come to my home. And I was like, oh, this is what I've been missing. So that really was a big part of me deciding to want to do this work.
Can I ask, just because, I had my moment. So with my first, it was extremely challenging. Same thing, didn't feel, I actually feel like the hospital I was at did like some education, but there was such like a textbook feel to it, not a human approach. Like,
Yes.
I'm a body and I don't know. So my kind of aha, or the big shift and change, actually happened from having a conversation, not with an in-home lactation consultant, but someone who probably could have been, just by experience, a mother of 6. So an adult, like my husband's very good friend's mother. So someone who has 6 adult children and has gone through 6 very unique experiences. And it was that conversation, feeling seen and heard, and not like, this is and some people really do need the very like specific physiological helpful things for the baby, for your breast, and all of that. But I needed something in the realm of like emotional support. The more stressed and feeling like a failure I was, the less my baby wanted to be around, that whole feeding process, right? Because my energy, it would just be this mirror. My frustration would turn into her frustration, and it felt like I was unable to, just relax and like let it flow and let it happen. And I was given permission by this wise, older, experienced woman who, for all intents and purposes, right, we hear, I'm a doula by certification, but it's a woman servant. So whether we did these certifications or not, this woman I was speaking to was
She had life certification.
Yeah, she had life certification. And her words were released a lot of the like shame and stress around it, and let me know that whatever happened would be okay, that this baby would be fed and okay. And it was almost instant that we were able to begin a super long breastfeeding journey together. But I'll say, like, the first 6+ weeks were in that like stress and shame and what's wrong with me, and then the cycle, because there's just, if mom is feeling the pressure, you're putting that right on the little one. So I'm curious, when you shared that you had a moment where you were struggling in your own journey and this person came to your house to support you, what was the support that kind of made a switch flip or kind of shifted your experience?
I think I was told from a lot of well-meaning people and professionals that everything I was going through was normal. And then when she came, it was like, no, actually, it can be better. We can work together and help it become better. And I was like, I knew I'm not crazy. Like everyone was like, oh, it's fine. It's normal. You'll grow out of it. He'll grow out of it. Or wait till he gets to be 12 pounds and then it'll get easier. I'm like, well, he's only 8 right now. This is going to be a long journey to get to 12. And, I don't want to continue to struggle. And I was also told by another well-meaning lactation consultant at the time that I should just give up because he wasn't transferring enough milk. And she questioned if I wanted my baby fed or to breastfeed. And I was like, well, can't you have both? And so being very stubborn and determined, I continued to seek answers. And so I think it was for me really validating that she listened. And I felt, like you said, I felt heard. And she was like, let's do this together. I can help you. And so was texting with me, the week or so afterwards. We're trying to get everything facilitated and stuff. And it was just so nice to have that person there that I knew shared a lot of my beliefs and was, if I was in it, she was in it to make sure our breastfeeding journey was going to be successful. And I always tell moms, I'm like, it's very much your determination. If you really want to do it, barring any physical issues, you totally can do it. And so having somebody be like a cheerleader for me, and it was just so impactful for our nursing journey for sure. And like you said, we went along to nurse for a very, 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 very long time.
When you meet with someone for the first time, and of course every individual will be completely unique, but do you find them how like I was presenting, just like with all of that like either like feel a failure or just because I hear the words like if you're determined, but sometimes that can cross over to that frenzied stress or anxious energy.
Yes. For sure. So one of the first things I usually ask them, of course, come into their home and try, or we meet on Zoom depending, and try to be a source of comfort for them. But one of the first things I ask them is what their goal is. Because I want to know where we're going. If your goal is to nurse your baby for 3 months or for a year, I'm going to give you a lot different advice. So I just want to know what page we're on and where we're heading so I can help you get there. If I don't know what your goal is, then it changes the type of advice I would give, and can be really impactful. So, I mean, I've had clients that their goal is to, like I said, breastfeed for just 3 months while they're off work. I've had other clients that are like, no, I don't want to give a drop of formula. I want to breastfeed for at least a year, if not more. I've had others that are like, I want to breastfeed as much as I can, but I'm going to have to pump because I've got this stringent work schedule and I've got to be away, or I've got to do this thing. So I try to meet them where they're at and just make sure that we're able to get to their goal realistically, and not something that's going to turn them into so stressed and crazy, because as you know, that really impacts your milk as well. And just be there to support them. And so a lot of the beginning of my time with a client, even if it's not a breastfeeding client, if it's a homeopathy client or a sleep client, is a lot of history, figuring out where we're trying to go, asking a lot of questions about how their family works, what their desires are, what is important to them. So that way we can make it to the goal together.
I love that. So that would take away though my question, like what's the number one what's the number one tip? But can you think of something that generally supports most of your clients, even if they have specific goals and intentions, but I am going to transition into sleep because I know it's a hot topic, but just as we, well, we're not closing this topic of breastfeeding and lactation, but just to visit, is there one thing that would support most people?
I feel like a couple things to give themselves all the grace because it's hard. Like your baby's learning to breastfeed at the same time that you're learning to breastfeed your baby. So like just give yourself a lot of grace. It's going to be rocky in the beginning, but it won't be like that forever. And if you get support, I would seek it as early and often as you feel you need it, whether it's from a mom who's had 6 babies and is willing to walk this road and hold your hand, whether it's a local La Leche league, a in-home lactation consultant, whatever that is, but just to get help early and often is so critical. And I know I loved La Leche League, and that was a big thing for me. I remember a girlfriend telling me, well, my mom used to go to these meetings. I don't know if they still have them, but she found them super helpful. And so then, of course, on Google, figuring out, is this something that still exists? And I was like, oh my gosh. And so that was really impactful and helpful in my journey. And I know they still have the meetings. Unfortunately, they're online. And so having that in-person support, I feel is such a game changer. So actually over the weekend, I started the first breastfeeding mama circle and hope to continue to do those monthly locally, just because I feel like that in-person support is so helpful. So like I said, like you were able to find a mama who is willing to help you, whoever it is, but just getting that support early and often is really key, and giving yourself the grace that it's okay. Y'all are learning together. Take it one day at a time and you'll be able to make it through for sure.
Love it. Is your local support group open?
Yeah, so we haven't picked a date yet, but it'll most likely be a Saturday in October. I just haven't picked one. We did it this past Saturday from 10 to 11 at I Need Coffee in Jupiter. So
Awesome.
they have
Yeah,
a really
I'll put all
cool
the ways to find you and all of your offerings. And I guess I'd like to add, for listeners out there who are not in Jupiter or even in cities or towns where these things exist currently. Well, I was going to make a recommendation, but what do you recommend in terms of like someone starting their own support group or support system?
Totally. I think, if that's on your heart, it's been something that has been on my heart for a while. And I had another motherhood support group for a little while, and I loved that. And so when that kind of came to an end, I have just been looking on how I can really make this come back again. So I think if it's something that's on your heart to do, absolutely start it. If you want to do a virtual, in person, wherever it is, that type of support is so needed. And when women gather in these beautiful circles, you gain so much from the person next to you that might be a more experienced mom, or the pregnant mom is gleaning all this knowledge. I just think it's so powerful when women gather in circles, big things change. So.
And I completely agree. And I used to teach prenatal yoga for pregnancy, and I now just do teacher trainings. And I say, you could, I mean, all the yoga postures are very beneficial to pregnancy,
Absolutely.
childbirth, and postpartum, but just getting together for 90 minutes or 1 hour, whatever the class length may be in your area, with other people going through similar experience, that community is probably above and beyond the other benefits. It's just such a soul filling experience to have community. So I love that not only seek support and then seek support from a professional or someone who does have that education or wisdom, but also seeking support from community. And I think a perfect transition to sleep is your first bit of advice, which I didn't think of until maybe second baby, who was up all night and slept all day. And I was like, oh, well, in their safe little womb, there wasn't this, sunshine, it's daytime, and dark time, it's nighttime. So I loved that your first tip for breastfeeding was that you're learning together. So same as they were not feeding in this way for their entire gestation period and growth and development. And so this is brand new. And I actually hadn't, oh, I probably have had that thought, but I hadn't thought about it in a long time. But I do remember, and I was just like, why is it playtime in the middle of the night? Because
Ah.
that's, and reflecting upon pregnancy, where that's where some of the most like amazing movements were happening in the middle of the night, like during
Yes.
pregnancy.
So I always tell people that during the day, most people are working. And so you're kind of walking back and forth, doing some type of movement, and you're lulling your baby to sleep. And then at night, when you're laying down, baby's like, it's party time. And so, of course, they're going to have a mixed up clock because they're like jet lag. They're completely opposite of us. So it's going to take some time. So as much as you can, like open the blinds, expose them to that sunlight, be loud during the day, let the mailman knock on the door, let the dog bark, run the vacuum or the dishwasher or whatever, do those things during the day. So that way they can get in, for lack of better terms, get rid of their jet lag and they can start sleeping more and longer stretches throughout the night.
Love that. I wish I thought about that with my first. But literally, it was weird because I was like, this is great that she's sleeping during the day because then I can like do stuff. And then I'm like, oh, but she's also up at night, which means I'm gonna be up at night. And that didn't last. Like that's like the very, we called it the twilight, the twilight zone. And then you realize that you can only run on fumes for so long before it starts creating physical impact, emotional, mental, spiritual impact. But I do wish I had had that epiphany like earlier on, rather than just not understanding what to do. So are you still your lactation lullabies? Is that still your business?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Just love it. So when people reach out to you for sleep, what's that energy like?
So it's very different. So I did a few sleep certifications until I finally landed on one that really resonated with me, because for me, I was telling people to do one thing and then I was actually doing a completely different thing in my home and it just didn't really resonate. So then I found this course that really is more about, in anything I find in my work, it's more about supporting the mom and being there for her than anything with the kid. There's never any issue typically with the kid. It's more about supporting mom and the family and the dynamic and stuff like that. So I'll ask them a lot of questions, see where their goals are and what they're wanting, what's been happening, what's working, what's not working. But ultimately, I don't do any sleep schedules or cry it out or sleep training per se. I really focus more on the connection, because sleep is the most vulnerable state we can ever be in. And so even though we've evolved very far past the caveman days, it's still part of us and inside of us. And so it's just primal for us to have that desire to be close during sleep, because you're so vulnerable. And so in caveman days, everyone would sleep on top of each other pretty much in a cave to warn each other if there was some type of a danger during the night. And so we still have that primal instinct in us, and being vulnerable and able to actually fall asleep. It's just so nice for babies, especially that first trimester, or that fourth trimester, the first couple months after delivery, to have that nice closeness, because that's their primal instinct. And so they're nervous about being vulnerable and going to sleep, because that's just something that's so ingrained in them, and they haven't fully flushed out all the nuances of our world, and it's hard for them. So when they're placed in another room or another space, especially if there's a room that, say you only go to put them in the nursery for sleep time and that's it, and they don't know that room as a comforting place where other good things happen, then they're less likely to want to go to sleep in this essentially foreign place to them. So spending time in that room, if that's your desire to have them be there, spending time doing things like playing, reading books, tummy time, massages, different things like that in their room can be really helpful for them to facilitate sleeping. But again, giving them grace because they're learning that it is okay. We're not going to be harmed in the middle of the night by a saber-toothed tiger. And you can quell that like primal instinct a little bit. But, you know, and for parents to give themselves grace too as they navigate that and figure out what works for their family. But I think for me, in supporting families with sleep, it's definitely more of a holistic and whole family approach. So, I mean, I tell families to do things like get red light bulbs in the nursery all the way to like mom and dad need to go on a date night, can be type of advice I would give to people. So it's just more holistic minded and the whole approach versus, okay, here's a sleep plan, do this, 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 and this, and now your baby will sleep X amount of hours kind of a thing. So it's definitely a different approach. But if that's something that resonates with you, then it's something that is really powerful.
I love all parts of that. All right, well, this was perfect. I actually had to stop the recording because my little one needs to come home from school, but I think it's like perfect. I think that the fact that, you know, parenthood is our topic today and that we show up. So I'm saying in case there's any like editing issues or whatever, we're here together. She's being picked up and taken care of. But this is it, like mamas in life and in business and mama first, or like mamas as our role. But it made me reflect upon what you first said, and I am going to touch upon your incredible, unique, like approach and advice, unique to what I hear traditionally. But when you said you speak to the parent, because usually the kid's just the kid, or the baby's just the baby, and it's really the parents doing these things like understanding primal, like understanding nature and understanding like our natural instincts, and that is really important as opposed to understanding how things should look in like textbook.
Yeah, I think in our society, a lot of times we are just trying to quell those primal instincts because we are trying to fit in this specific box and do these things that our society deems important and appropriate. And so a lot of times, if you know specific things like this is why this is happening, it makes it a lot easier to understand and to get through than if you're like, I have no idea why this is happening. This is just my baby is always doing this thing. And then sometimes I'll be like, oh, well, it's because this happens usually at this time or this stage, or they're feeling this. Then they're like, oh, okay, got it. Like it's a lot easier it's more palatable when you can understand why something's happening and that it does have this purpose. And it's not just to make you sleep deprived or to make you crazy.
Absolutely. And even like, well, now I think about the wonder years. They were like 6 weeks, this happens, 7.5 weeks, this happens. And as, you know, crazy as it sounds, it really is like all the developmental changes. And it's just nice to have confirmation after, and then the teeth and this and that. But also you offered really tangible ways to support soothing and connection in order to best facilitate all of these natural things that are happening. And what really stands out to me is making like the environment safe. And also I remember almost like an urgency, because like you said, you don't incorporate like schedules, but like, oh, it's this time. I mean, I actually feel that more now that the kids are in school, but that urgency, the same thing with the nursing struggles that I had, that urgency made me a stressed out human with icky energy. And then that would turn into them not being felt soothed or connected, or like I was being present. And that there was something wrong with them if they weren't. It was just a whole energy exchange, like I expressed before with the breastfeeding, but it was the same with the sleep. And it became this energy exchange that was counterintuitive and counterproductive to sleep.
Yeah, I always tell people, I'm like, if you've been trying for like 5 minutes and it's not working, get out of the nursery or wherever you're trying to put the baby to sleep, go do something, go check the mail, and then try again. Because if you're coming at it with this energy of rush and hurry, and it's this time and I've got to get you to sleep because you need to sleep this much, it's not going to happen. They can feel that so much from us. And, also in the same tune, babies can't tell time. They have no idea. They see time in a different way because of the sun going down and feeling different. They know. And so having a rhythm is helpful, but not having a schedule. So it's like, we do this thing and then we do this and then this and then a nap, or then this and then bed. So having a rhythm, I feel, is very, very beneficial. But even in like those early years, they can't tell time. They have no idea what time it is, but they do know what to expect and what comes next. And so if you're rigid and hold yourself to a specific schedule, it's noon, we've got to do this. If it doesn't happen at 12:02, then all is lost. That's a really stressful way to live.
And with that said, what are your thoughts on like familiarity and routine bringing comfort as well?
Absolutely. For sure. I definitely think having a rhythm so they know what to expect next. And even when they're tiny, explaining that to them verbally, because yes, they don't understand what you're saying to them, but they understand the energy behind it, the intonation, they'll start to learn. So if you really narrate your days for them, like, okay, you're eating now, and then next we're going to go play on the floor, and then we're going to do this, and then we'll come back to this thing. And having things that you generally do in a sequence and a rhythm can be really helpful for them to know what to expect next.
Love it. And in the same kind of visiting the offering of advice, the advice time, what would be one general, you gave several like tips and guidance in what you shared, but when people come to you, or say someone's listening and they're having their own struggles right now. So that's a more unique way to word the question. So someone's listening and they're like, well, what can I do right now? I'm really struggling. And I'll be more specific. We'll do like baby, not necessarily like my kid. I'm getting them to go to bed because they have to go to school in the morning, but new mom.
Yeah, like new moms, to give yourself all the grace. Your baby is learning. Narrating your days and having some sort of a rhythm can be really helpful, but especially in that fourth trimester, to really not try and push things. I'll have people come to me and they're like, my baby's 3 weeks and I want to get them on a sleep schedule. And that's just really unrealistic. They need to be close to you. Naps in the beginning are going to be on you. And just to like surrender to that in a way, it makes it so much more peaceful. You're like, this is it. I always tell them that they need to make an indent of their butt on the sofa. Like they just don't need to move much, and really just enjoy that time, because as you know, they grow up really, really, really stinking fast. And so it's to spend that time with them. You need the rest, they need that time, and give yourself all the grace. Call on your village. They can do your laundry. They can watch your older kids. They can do your dishes, cook your meals, things like that. That's how we used to survive not very long ago, is to have a village that would do those things. So when people offer, I know as women, it's really difficult to accept that. But when people offer, accept it, say thank you for the meal offering, and let them know when they can bring it over. Say thank you for emptying your dishwasher, and not like, no, you don't have to do that. It can be really difficult, but just accept it, lean in, surrender. It will get easier. And then seek help. It's really hard when you're in the middle of it to see the forest from the trees. And if you seek help, somebody can see from an outsider's point of view. And it doesn't necessarily even have to be a professional. If you have a trusted friend has a lot of kids and has gone through similar struggles and issues, it might be something super simple to fix what you're happening in your life. But if you're able to have this friend come and tell you, hey, I think you might need to be doing this, you're like, oh my gosh, that's super, why didn't I think of that? Because you're in the middle of it and you can't think, you're sleep deprived and stuff. So to have somebody be able to zoom out on that and show you some of the little tweaks that you might be able to make that might make a huge difference can be really helpful.
I love that. So the two takeaways that I received from you and your guidance for both scenarios are just being informed and educated to like, not just like, this is it, this is what you're going to have to deal with, but this is it. And here's why it's okay. And here's why it's the part of like development and growth for the both of you. Again, as a baby learning and as a mom learning with this, in congruence with this other human being, that it's all a learning process. And to have someone, again, wise and not just Googling the heck out of everything, is so very important. So that's number one. And the other takeaway I have, again, in both scenarios is community and support. And just to add to the like, being able to accept help, just know if you need this little addition is that you will pay it forward. You just will, because that's community. So when you're in this, and it doesn't just have to be in, fourth trimester, immediately postpartum, it can be any part in your motherhood journey. And your tribe can change and transform over time, but it's everything, right? That tribe and that community and that support.
And people want to help too. So you're giving them a beautiful opportunity. People want to help and seek these opportunities. And so it's not, I think in our society, in the more recent times, we've really looked at it as being a burden. But if people are offering, they truly want to help, and it makes them excited and feel like a part of something. So if they're offering and you're not accepting, then that's not giving them the opportunity to help. So you'll definitely be able to pay it forward for sure many times over in different scenarios, maybe not with that particular person, but in some time in life. But allowing them to help is, such a blessing to them.
That is a gift. I love that added layer to it. So yeah, that's what I really want to emphasize out of all of this. And my final question is, and this will be in the show notes because I know people are doing things while they're listening or watching this podcast, is how do we find you? How do people work with you? Do you have availability for people to work with you? Do you work with groups? I want to give this as an opportunity on how to find you, and I'll share all the links in the show notes.
Yeah. So absolutely all the above, have opportunities, groups, all the things. So I have a website, lactationandlullabies.com, or my Instagram, Lactation and Lullabies FL. You can see kind of more updated events and different things on there, or Lauren Reza on Facebook. I actually have a lot of my clients come to me through Facebook. So that's definitely an available avenue as well.
Love it. Thank you so much. Thank you just for sharing all your wisdom, all your experience. And I'm just so grateful to have you in my life and close. So I hope that people who are listening, and I just know that people need this kind of help and support. And I want to help you or spread like the light and the love that you give to moms. I love in your bio when you're like mothering mothers through motherhood. It really is so beautiful and so needed. And I just really want to thank you for your time and for your presence and for being here and for sharing, Lauren. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Sarah. I appreciate it.
Course. We would love to hear your takeaways, so you can find us on our respective social media pages. All of these Peaceful Power Project podcasts, not all of them. This one is also available on YouTube. So if you want to, watch, and again, I had to take care of some mom business during and just be part of and be in the room with us, then check this out on YouTube, leave some comments, subscribe, etc. I would be so grateful if you're listening to this on Apple Podcasts, if you could leave a review. It's very helpful as well. If you're watching this and you're curious about all of the oils behind Lauren, you can reach out to her and ask more questions. That might be another episode, another podcast. I realize we did not get to the homeopathy, but the focus on lactation and lullabies today, and you'll just have to come back.
Yes, absolutely.
Awesome.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you, and wishing everyone peace, power, and presence today.